So let's dive into an example and start analyzing and asking those tough questions. So let's take a look at how these headlines about the extraterrestrials play out. The one on the left is from an polling company. It's Angus Reid, and you're going to be doing a research project that takes a look at Angus Reid polls. So it's a polling company, and polling companies, their job is to take surveys and report on what they find. Now, this on the right is Calgary Herald. It's a newspaper. And that newspaper read about the poll and reported on it. So that's why the titles are very similar. So how did both the polling company and the newspaper, how did they report on this survey? And what makes them the same? Well, they both have an attention-grabbing picture. And they both report the survey results as relative frequency. So 4 out of 5, that, remember, is a relative frequency because you are comparing how many people believe in aliens compared to everybody that was polled. Now, how are these two headlines different? It's quite subtle. There's not a huge difference, but it's the language that is used that makes it different. So the Angus Reid one refers to Stranger Things, maybe in hopes of getting some clicks because it's very related to the new Netflix show that's so popular, whereas the Calgary Herald has softened the language a little bit and puts wants to believe instead of believes. So let's start asking some of the questions related to this survey. So what is the population? Well, the population are all Canadian adults. And what was the sample? Because they didn't survey all the adults in Canada. It was, if you go to the Angus Reid poll and read about how they did it with an online survey. They picked from a random group of people that are in there that have volunteered to take Angus Reid polls. The sample represents the general population. Now, what that means is that they were very careful to have 50% women, 50% men, and people that were spread out over all the provinces. Education level was spread out, and income level was spread out. So the Angus Reid Institute is very careful to create samples that reflect the general population of Canada. And they also make sure that the sample is large. Now, of the ones I've seen, there are approximately 1,500 people that took the survey. So let's take a closer look at 2 of the many survey questions that Angus Reid asked, and ask some hard questions about them. Take a look and see if they were fair and clear and unbiased. So I've just picked out 2 here to take a look at. Do you think the following statement is true or not true? There is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. And then you have a sliding scale to be able to answer that. Everything from definitely true on one end to definitely not true on one end and definitely true on the other side. So in my opinion, this is a clear question. And what makes it clear is that it's short, it's easy to read and understand. And it's easy to answer because there is room for everybody to be able to pick a choice that would fit. Now let's go to the second question. There are things that happen on Earth that cannot be explained by science. And again, you have that same scale that you can choose from. Is this a clear question? Well, let's think about this if you were from the perspective of somebody that believes in aliens. So let's say you believe in aliens. How would you answer that question? Well, you would probably say, true. That's definitely true because science doesn't explain aliens. Now, what if you were a different person and did not believe in aliens? So didn't believe in aliens, but said, hey, you know what? We can't explain cancer. Science doesn't explain that yet. We haven't figured it all out yet. So I also would say that science hasn't. There are things that happen on Earth that we can't explain by science. That doesn't mean that science will never be able to explain it. It's just that we haven't figured that out yet. So notice these two different people, completely different views, would answer the question the same way, which means that this question is ambiguous. It's hard to answer. So even the very big Angus Reid company has questions that are not perfect. So let's take a look at how the Angus Reid poll chose to illustrate the results of their survey. They did it as a bar graph, and we're looking at the question, is there intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? I want you to notice that they only are showing the true and the definitely true and the probably true. They are not showing how many people did not believe. They left that out of the bar graphs. And we're looking at this is about 80%. And so that's where the data comes from. 4 out of 5 Canadians believe in intelligent life or believe in aliens. So now let's skip to the newspaper article and focus our attention on that. Who do you think this article was meant for? Who is the audience? Well, it's published in Calgary, so I would say Calgarians. And does the article have spin? It seems like a fairly neutral headline, but if you think about why did this newspaper print the article, it was probably because they wanted to sell papers. And that means they wanted a headline that would attract a lot of readers. And most of us are interested in aliens and have thought about it and are also watching Stranger Things on Netflix. And it's a hot topic, and so they have chosen this to be able to sell papers. So yes, there is spin. So let's take a look at another question that was asked by Angus Reid, but not reported on by the Calgary Herald. It is possible to communicate with the dead. Do you think that's true? Definitely true, and so on. And if you look at the results, most Canadians don't think it's possible to communicate with the dead. So Calgary Herald could have chosen a headline to reflect that. Most Canadians say we cannot talk to the dead. However, how many papers would that sell? Probably not that many, because that seems pretty obvious to most people. So they chose the headline they did in order to sell papers.